Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video. Now, when I was growing up, I loved reading books. When it came to anything graphic novel-wise or even a good chapter book, anytime after school, I would pick up a book and I would read it. I obviously did it for the grade, but I also became invested in various book series, chapter books, things like that. Anything that had an adventure to it. It involved history, mysteries, or anything that really just had a good story to it. I would read it. And one of those book series that I would pick up in my late elementary school years was The Adventures of Tintin, a graphic novel series made by Belgian author Georges Remy, better known as Hergé. The series would consist of 24 albums detailing the adventures of Belgian reporter Tintin and his dog Snowy. Now, something to keep in mind too is that there are those one or two editions that publishers want to leave out of print and forget about because of their poorly aged content. And the reason I'm revisiting the Tintin IP now is because recently the news broke that Tintin, and also Popeye, but mainly Tintin, has now entered the public domain. And for those of you who aren't aware of what public domain is after a certain amount of time has passed, intellectual property, whether it be music, books, TV, or a film, enters the public domain. Usually, if a property is close to, I think, a century old and the creator is no longer living, anyone can take that property and create their own adaptation, their own transformative work, free from any copyright infringement. Now, that doesn't mean something like Tintin has 100% entered the public domain, because there are a specific set of rules to how this works. Other than the graphic novels, there has been other Tintin media produced over the years, such as the 1990s cartoon adaptation of the book serializations, and the other recent Tintin film directed by Steven Spielberg. Those aren't really in the public domain because they have copyrights attached to their respective production companies, their more recent works. Also, I won't forget to mention that public domain and copyright laws aren't universal in this case. As for Tintin's home domain being Belgium in the European Union, the laws are a bit different, and their laws say that they also have to wait 70 plus years after the creator's death for it to be public domain. Hergé passed away in 1983, so anyone in the European Union has to wait until after 2054 for anything Tintin to be made in the public domain, at least in Europe. However, what has technically entered into the public domain, according to my home soil's laws, being the good old US of A, is the earliest depiction of Tintin, the first ever novelization, published in 1929, titled The Adventures of Tintin in the Land of the Soviets. I bought the first copy a couple years back, planning to review it, because it is considered, I think, one of the one or two adaptations that's kind of left out of print. It was considered forgotten media, along with another one that I'll mention later. But something told me to hold off until the time was right, and now given that this early depiction is in the public domain, I guess the time is right to look into the first publication of Tintin. As for the copy that I have, the print is mostly monochrome with Hergé's early drawing style when he illustrated for a weekly publication called Le Petit Vingtième.
Le Petit Vingtième.
Intended for younger audiences interested in illustrated works and stories. This first book consists of that early art style before he developed it into later publications into the 30s and 40s.
I have to say, your face is familiar. Have I drawn you before?
Occasionally.
Of course!
That's a thick-ass boy! Damn!
There does exist a recolor of this, however, I can't seem to find one for sale, or at least for a reasonable price, or that's in wide circulation. But it does exist. I've seen pictures of it, trust me. Something to keep in mind about this story is that it was written in the late 1920s, early 30s, and observes a specific moment in European history. The focus here is on the Bolshevik communism in the USSR, and the moves a certain mustachioed Georgian man was making at the time. The book takes into account things like the USSR being an authoritarian one-party system that doesn't allow anything like the freedom of speech or freedom to vote. Any voices that seek to criticize the leadership are silenced disappeared, or I think you know where this is going.
Breakfast not included to Siberia.
In 1928, sometime before the publication of Hergé's book, Joseph Stalin in the Soviet Union also commenced his policies to modernize the country through a series of 5-year plans. The goal was to have the USSR industrialize and support a large urban population to work in the factories to produce raw materials like steel. And to feed a growing population, you have to have food. A lot of food production being increased. And if you owned a farm in the Soviet Union, it technically wasn't yours anymore. It went to the government for forced collectivization. Wealthy farm owners, known as the kulaks, were forced to give up their production to the government. In response, the kulaks rebelled, and Stalin wasn't happy with that. The forced collectivization led to millions starving to death in the countryside in what is now Ukraine, in a period known as the Holodomor in the early 30s. For being such a dark time in history, in Soviet history, the comic consists of mostly slapstick, wherever Tintin has a run-in with the bad guys. It has what the kids call these days the goofy moments, and there's certainly quite a few goofy moments in this book. Usually Tintin is deceiving a group of incompetent guards behind their backs, slipping a banana peel, watching them fall, dressing up as a ghost to scare Cheka agents away, building a car out of garbage. And there's this moment where Tintin conveniently found a diving suit to escape a Soviet jail. This was aimed at younger audiences, younger readers, and I can understand why Hergé couldn't make it seriously dark, especially for what was going on in the Soviet Union at the time, taking such a serious concept. And the main plot is Tintin tries to go to the Soviet Union to write a story about the place, gets chased by Soviet agents, trolls them a bit, and leaves. That's basically the story. The comic doesn't take itself seriously, but there are some genuine moments that allude to the reality of life under Soviet communism at the time. Hergé makes abundantly clear that communism sucks, and he certainly has a bone to pick with the communists, making them look like dumb Indiana Jones goons. Although this is known to be the less serious depiction, again, Tintin still took some time. It still took some time for Hergé to polish up the story, to really add more of the serialized feel of it, and add more sophisticated plot lines, and just make the story more engaging, other than it being a silly, long Sunday morning paper type of thing. If there's really anything that tells you about the goofiness of this first book, there's a villain somewhere in the book named Borshtitsov, like the cold beet soup, borscht, which is practically calling an American villain Hot Dog Man, or a Hispanic villain Los Pollos Hermanos. But anyway, sometime in the mid-1930s, Tintin was acquired by Casterman Publishing House. It was from there that he met with a Chinese exchange student at a fine arts academy in Brussels, Zhang Zhongren, or better to say Cheng Chong Chen, who influenced him and inspired him to thoroughly research the cultures and places he's depicting in his stories. He became good friends with Hergé, and for those who guessed it, Chang got a character named and modeled after him, which was Hergé's token of appreciation for Chang. Chang made his debut in the 5th book, The Blue Lotus. I'd say it was for the best that Hergé took Chang's criticism to heart, because let's just say his early works did have depictions that didn't age well, especially the 2nd book. Apart from this one got the most scrutiny, is the one where he goes to the Congo, when the Republic of Congo was known back then as the Belgian Congo and was colonized by the Belgians. That in itself is a darker history when it came to the Congo's relations with Belgium and Belgium as a colonial power. Although this publication did face the harsher scrutiny, I'd say it might be worth looking into when it comes to the history of the Tintin series, and perhaps I could look into it in the future. I'm not sure. Now, Some fun facts about Tintin in the Land of the Soviets. For some time since 1930, this publication was considered lost media for about 40 years before Hergé made a reissue that served as his personal copy at first and then decided to do a complete reissue sometime in 1973. In the reissues since then, there is a page missing, but gladly thanks to Tintin.com, where I got most of this information, it's available to view digitally. It doesn't affect the reading experience if you own a modern copy, although you will see the slight interruptions between panels on pages 101 and 102 if you have a modern copy, because I think most of you will have a modern copy if you have bought a copy from a bookstore or Amazon, because I think the early publication is like super rare and like can go up to like into the thousands when it comes to its value. But overall, should you give The Land of the Soviets a read? I'd say yes if you're interested in getting an insight on where Hergé started the serialization of Tintin. It's well worth having a modern physical copy. You have access to look at the colors, the art, the ink really pops out if you have a physical copy. Or if you're not satisfied with the Tintin Land of the Soviets first edition, then I guess according to fair use, according to copyright, according to public domain, I guess if you could now create something transformative out of this, like a complete redraw, recolor, or heck, if someone more talented than I am could even animate the book, animate this edition. We'll just have to wait and see. Who knows? Time will tell. I did order a whole box set of these to revisit the entire series over time, but if you're not much of a reader, I would say it is definitely well worth to check out the animated series. It's really good adaptation. But anyways, Tintin, one of my favorite childhood series, finally in the public domain. Finally gonna revisit it as an adult, now that I've definitely have a broader understanding of the context, the history behind Tintin, and finally I can just get a better look at the series, things that I missed as a kid. So anyways, if Tintin brings you nostalgia, there's that. If you guys want to stay tuned for more of my content, make sure to subscribe, like, comment, share, and I'll see you guys in the next one.